Guess who it is again? Y'all already know. When you see me, you see education, you see knowledge, you see wisdom, you see kinkiness, you see domination, you see all things regal, you see all things ethereal, you see all things perfect.
Really?
I get it. But we're here again for some more BDSM one-on-one with Madam Carmen.
Also, before we get into it, don't forget to like and subscribe to my YouTube channel. I appreciate all of your support.
Today, we're going to be talking about subspace. Now, subspace is a very tricky conversation because a lot of people may or may not have experienced it, and sometimes unconsciously have experienced it and didn't really understand the process in which they were going through. Subspace is a very exciting and exhilarating space.
For real.
Now, me being a dom, you would think, how would you know about subspace? Wouldn't that just be just a subs? No. Actually, subspace is a sensation and an experience that you feel when you are experiencing a very high, elevated level of your endorphins. When your endorphins are increased and they rise, and you are experiencing pleasure from a much more unorthodox process or way, like spanking, impact play, pain, any of those sorts, and they bring you to this subspace. A lot of people are like, why am I feeling this sense of euphoria when I'm receiving pain? Because you find pleasure in pain. And when you find that pleasure in pain and you are in a space, in a place where you can release and relinquish all control and just be one with your thoughts and your mind and your space and just be present in that moment and be able to relinquish and just be vulnerable, that is a moment that is possible for you to reach subspace. One thing that I want to make note of that involves subspace is the
aftercare process.
As someone who has been on the giving and receiving end of subspace, I want to make sure that we discuss the ethical processes and protocols that must be taken during and after a subspace. Make sure that we are practicing safe and ethical ways to even reach and attain that subspace. My first experience with a subspace was me bottoming or receiving pleasure in that manner. So during that time, the service top that I was playing and exchanging with had me in a position of bottoming, meaning that I was bent over and I was receiving impact from hands and implements. Now, no, if anyone knows Madam Carmen, they know that Madam Carmen does not like pain. I don't enjoy receiving pain. But as a dom and as a top, a service top that I practice as, it is very important to me for me to be able to understand what my submissives and bottoms are going through when I get to experience it myself. So it was very important to me during my training processes of me establishing myself as a dom that I understood what the pain and the impact and what it is that I was planning on doing with my bottoms and submissives, what that is feeling like, what the experience is like. And lo and behold, I actually went into a subspace. The beauty about my first experience entering a subspace is that it was with someone that I trust. So I was able to relinquish that power and that control and just be vulnerable and just be in the moment and be there and be present. And being able to do that helps you reach that level of subspace that we all want to attain. But once I got to a level of comfortability of receiving the constant and the consistent patterns of the impact play that I was receiving, it was easy for me to use those patterns, those thuds and those impact patterns to be able to basically hypnotize me and bring me into this space where those thuds not only meant that I was receiving impact, but they were in control of the pattern that kept me in that subspace. With this melodic pattern that I'm feeling and hearing, that's bringing me into this subspace. These sounds and melodic patterns created a deep wave. It also started to intertwine with the breathing patterns that I was actually doing. I was actually having consistent breathing patterns to breathe through the impact One of the most important tips that I can give any bottom or any masochist or any person that wants to experience impact play on the receiving end is breathing through it. Breath work is amazing. Breath work not only works for just yoga, breath work works for BDSM. Breath work works for play, kink play, fetish play. When you feel like you want to endure past your threshold, you want to be able to experience pain and impact and sensations past your normal threshold, it is very important for you to breathe through it. Breaths. If you pay more attention to your breath and your breathing, you would be able to subconsciously take your mind off of the receiving of the impact and just focusing on your breathing will be able to help you endure more impact. You wouldn't even realize how long you would be receiving and taking the impact because you're so focused on your breath work. So that's a key. That's a little tip for you.
Message.
Those mental stimulations and patterns became the subject matter of my subspace. So these enticing sensations overwhelmed my body. They covered me and hovered me.
What? Bro, what are you talking about, man?
And they moved throughout my body as if I felt I had no control of my body. And I felt safe. I didn't feel like I needed to have that control. And being someone who is a control freak, that is one thing that I need to make sure that I am conscious of when I am practicing and playing with other play partners, is that my need and desire to be in control in the settings and in whatever it is that I have going on, I need to be in control of.
I'm in charge.
But in these moments of being able to trust this person and find enjoyment and pleasure in the sensations that I was experiencing, that was the recipe to my subspace. Well, as long as the thumping and the thudding and the sounds and the breathing patterns were consistent and they never stopped, I could be in that subspace for as long as that. Now, what's important is the safetyness of subspace. Now, we all know, like I explained earlier, that a subspace is an alternative mental space. So you want to make sure that the person that you're still playing with is coherent and still aware, understanding what they're engaging in. So that's why we check in.
Hey. How y'all doing?
That's why hey, you still okay? Are you okay? How are you feeling? And for me as a top, when I'm asking and checking in with my bottoms, I'm saying, hey, how are you feeling? How are you feeling? Do you still want to move forward? The only response that I want to hear are the colors within the color safety protocol system. So if I say, hey, how are you feeling? I want to hear green, yellow, or red. I don't want to hear, I'm good. Oh, it's great. Because sometimes those words could still be you in a subspace. You can still be exercising and saying and speaking because you're experiencing this subspace that you're enjoying. So you're like, yeah, I'm good, I'm fine. But I need to know, are you still aware that the safety protocol system is the traffic light system? Are you still aware what the red, the yellow, and the green means? Are you still aware that that exists within this scene? For me, when I experienced my first subspace, once it subsided and it was time for me to get back into my neutral space, which is the coherent, sane space that we are currently in right now, in order for me to get back into that space, aftercare has to take effect. In my case, my aftercare was intense hugs, rubs, intense holding, just holding me very tight and firmly is what I needed in those moments. The consistent rubs and hugs woke me back up, brought me back to a conscious state to where I was able to still recognize where I was at, still recognize who I was with, and still recognize what was going on. At no point after, during, or before I entered a subspace that I lost consciousness of what was going on. The only thing that I stepped out of was my body for a second. I kind of had like an outer body-like experience. And in that could, in case people may think, oh, like, so how are you aware of where you are?
You know where you are.
That outer body space that I went to, I knew I was there because of the impact play that I was currently experiencing. Those constant patterns and that constant rhythmic pattern that I was experiencing from the impact play, as well as the constant patterns of my breathing, kept me conscious enough to realize what was still going on. So that was one of the most important things when I experienced Subspace, I was curious about. I was really concerned if I would lose consciousness and lose the awareness of where my surroundings were and who I was actually with and what was going on. But in reality, no, you're still reminded. You're still reminded consistently when you're hearing the rhythmic patterns of the impact or whatever it is that you're experiencing, with the sensations. You're still reminded by the sensations as well as your breathing patterns that you are present and in a moment of pleasure, in a moment that may bring you to a possible orgasm too. Training session with my service top at that particular time, the outer body experience lasted for about 10 to 15 minutes. So I felt numbness. I heard like light ringing in my ears. And when I said I felt numbness, it was numbness that wasn't detrimental or dire to my health. Just light tingles and light sensation and light numbness to the areas that was receiving the impact, which makes sense because if you're constantly getting spanked in that particular specific area, there's bound to be redness, a little bit of heat coming from that area, as well as the person experiencing some tingles or numbness. My aftercare experience also included breath work. Why? Because I was already exercising a breathing pattern. So because I was exercising a breathing pattern, that was what brought me out of the subspace. Changing the pattern of my breathing helped me realize, okay, you don't need to breathe in such a panting way. You don't need to breathe at a much faster pace. You can slow down your breathing. Your breathing could be a little bit, your breaths, your inhales and your exhales can be a little bit longer now in this moment. So following my subspace experience, my service top at that time and I sat and we discussed what it was that I experienced as well as what they experienced. Now, we'll get to this later, but there is a such thing as top space. And I want people to know that subspace does not mean submissive space. Subspace is, the sub in space means an alternative space. So an alternative space to the actual conscious state that you currently are in. This is an alternative space to that. Like I said, you still remain conscious, but it's just an alternative conscious space that you experience for at least about 10 to 15 to 20 minutes, depending on how consistent the exchange that you're having is. One of the things that I learned and that they learned about me was how fast and how quickly my body released that power and that control and allowed myself to be in that vulnerable space. And I told him that it was because I knew him. And I was like, I was comfortable with him. It wasn't a sense of attraction. It wasn't a sense of sexual arousal. It was literally, oh, this person is training me. Logically, to me, it makes sense. Hey, why would I let someone train me if I don't trust them?
Perhaps you're right.
So I might as well allow this person to really, truly help train me and guide me by also showing me the other side of the rope, the other side of the slash, we would say in this community. Another difference that I experience is that I've been spanked before during sexual pleasures and moments of intimacy, but I had never been spanked to this degree on a consistent level for a long period of time at a pain threshold that was a little bit outside of my own norm. So it was a little bit more painful.
Just a little. Just a little.
Than I would normally experience just in I would call it my personal sex life. So I call that the holy trifecta. So the holy trifecta would be your breath work, the actual sensations that you're experiencing, and the time frame and the consistency that you're experiencing it. That trifecta right there will bring you straight to a subspace. Needless to say, I truly enjoyed myself.
It's like a reward.
I really enjoyed myself as I was bottoming for my particular service top at that particular time. This particular person was actually training me to become a more established and well-rounded and well-experienced dominant. I am dominant naturally, but you know, when we're practicing within this lifestyle, there are protocols, there are rules, there are guidelines that I feel like are very important, which is why henceforth you are here with me. Each one teach one, baby.